Hello, I'm Karen. Welcome to our community-supported agriculture think tank, where we discuss the importance of growing our own food, sharing ideas, solutions, and supporting you in creating your agriculture projects that can benefit everyone. We know that a lot of the farmers are going to be transitioning, and we know that hemp, we've been talking about hemp for quite a while here too. And so it was so great when I found Dion, who is the founder of 8 Fire Innovation. He has been creating Hempcrete buildings for almost a decade. And when I asked him if he would join us, because I just knew that I wanted to have an expert on here to share the possibilities and how we can step into creating a new reality. I'm really pleased to have Dion here, and I'm just going to be sharing the presentation, and then Dion's going to take us through. So welcome, Dion. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. It's an honor. Yeah, when the presentation starts rolling, we can go over that, but just a little history. Like Karen alluded to, I've been building with hemp for almost 10 years now. Started out as a personal mission, developed into a passion, and now it's a life mission. So it's about getting people into healthier homes and creating a better world. So I can see the presentation is up now. Karen's going to be managing that for me, so she'll be rolling through that. So yeah, this is kind of an intro to Hempcrete, the benefits, why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I think it's so important for people to adopt this technology and this building style. We're using basically what's left of the plant. So after all the commodities are extracted, from the CBD, seed oil, plant matter, protein, the omega fats, all that stuff gets harvested for various reasons. What we have left is a woody core of the plant, and that's what I use in Hempcrete. So it's about full plant utilization. Little history, as the slideshow changes, I have a farming background. I've been in Northern Alberta my entire life. My grandpa was in farming, Alberta wheat pool. I've been, all over Canada presenting with different organizations. Yeah, just enlightening people to the benefits and the opportunities that we have with hemp. So most people are familiar with hemp, I'm sure. It's one of the original crops, one of the first cultivated crops. A lot of different areas in the world can grow hemp, so it's not something exclusive to North America. Each region has its own indigenous seeds they've been cultivated for a variety of different reasons. So it's one of the fastest growing plants on the planet. So comes to maturity, within one growing season, where we can harvest that woody core and use that in our industrial applications. So yeah, just about everything we see can be made from hemp. So we've got fuels, medicines, plastics, housing, and every variety of those commodities. Hemp complements or can compete with every major industry on the planet. So this is a little video. Hopefully you can play this when I ask there, Karen. A little video presentation. This is from Matt King. He did a teaser project, and he's been working on releasing this for some time now. Hopefully he gets the resources to do so. If we can play it, let's just roll the video and listen to what Matt has to say.
Growing up, of course, hemp was automatically associated to the cannabis family, which also relates to the illegal side of marijuana. So that was all very forbidden and restricted, discouraged.
People will often ask, will I get high eating your hemp seed or your hemp oil or your hemp protein powder? And the answer is no.
We could lose our position if we don't get on, and if we don't start working with countries and companies internationally and just start deregulating this whole thing.
Hemp is not a drug. Hemp is about fiber, oil, paper, building material. It's just endless, the possibilities of working with hemp.
Educate yourself. You have to know what you are doing. If you don't know, if you treat hemp as any other fairy crop, you're
always shocked with how many hemp farmers are scared that they're going to be considered a cannabis farm.
Why we're still with Health Canada surprises me. We should be under Ag Canada like any other crop.
This has obviously nothing to do with something that's dangerous. This has everything to do with who's making money.
This is about a plant whose life began long before that of mankind. And despite the preposterous implication that it is unsafe, it continues to offer thousands of solutions to a world experiencing an epidemic of turmoil. Perhaps it is a global responsibility that we renew this friendship.
What do you call hemp seed in Nepal?
Shadowbang, Tulubang, small bango.
So yeah, Matt did a great job kind of explaining some of the challenges and hurdles that we've gone through with the industry from the stigma attached to it. Farmers have been reluctant to grow it. Processors, have not been available to process the commodities that industry needs to move forward. It's changing vastly. When that video was shot, he talked about the regulations regarding hemp, surrounding hemp being tied to Health Canada. That's changed. Now we are under Ag Canada, so there's a lot less red tape and regulations in growing it. There are more processors now available that are processing it. So world-class processors here in Alberta. So we are working with them, kind of dialing in what our specific needs are for industry to really, incubate and accelerate. It's really hard to go to market with commodities if there isn't regulatory checks and balances as far as that raw material is concerned. We got to have some kind of consistency in raw material, which is honestly coming to fruition right now. So a little talk about Hempcrete. It's a biomass biomaterial. Again, it's from the woody core of the plant. Hemp fiber is broken down into two areas, which is the outer bast, which is used for clothing, textiles, and car panels, insulation. There's a lot of different commodities that the bast can help produce. What we're focused is the woody core of the plant. That's a high cellulose structure. And again, it depends on how that crop is processed to that scale that we need for hempcrete development. So essentially, hempcrete is a combination of hemp and lime, which Alberta has. We have farmers growing hemp, we have processors processing hemp, and we've got mountains and mountains of lime. So it's a low carbon footprint processing typically for a lot of the limes we use. Whereas Portland cement, there's a high carbon footprint. There's a lot of heat and energy that goes into that production. So we're minimizing a lot of that carbon output as far as processing and having those raw materials available. Hemp is considered carbon neutral or carbon negative. Again, depending on travel, logistics, how far it's shipped around the world and stuff like that, but it's considered carbon neutral or carbon negative, which means it absorbs more CO2 in its field life than it is discharged during processing. There's a variety of reasons why we're using hempcrete. It's an amazing material. I'm absolutely passionate about hempcrete. Hempcrete is respected to be an earthquake-resistant material, which means it's got a little bit of movement, it's got a little bit of play. It's not going to crack and deteriorate like concrete will. So it's got a little bit of play. Another thing with hempcrete too is it's a material that's been known to auto heal. The lime that we use is reactivated with water, so if a crack did appear in the hempcrete, atmospheric humidity will find its way into that, and potential, and I've seen it myself, where it can rebond and auto heal, which is amazing. And not a lot of the building materials that we use today can do that. Fire is a huge risk. A lot of the synthetic materials we are using today are very toxic, especially when they're on fire. toxic fumes. I think some studies have been done. If a fire breaks out in a conventional house, we have about 12 to 15 minutes to get out of that house before we can be consumed by toxic smoke and flame. So fire, one of Hempcrete's greatest advantages that we see is in fire resistance. It won't flash or flare. So like everything on the planet, it can be burned, but it takes an amazing amount of heat energy to sustain any smoldering. And that smoldering generates CO2, which is a fire suppressant. The longer a hempcrete structure burns, the more CO2 is produced, the slower it burns. Mold. That's another major concern with conventional construction. We're sealing air and humidity in our walls, which is the perfect opportunity for mold to grow. I've never seen mold inside a hempcrete block or inside a hempcrete structure. But in 10 years, I've pushed the envelope with hemp and with hempcrete. I've pushed the envelope of the material and found its break point. I have seen mold on the surface in very extreme situations, not on a rendered wall, but on a wall that's left open and against something impermeable like plastic. So we don't have any vapor barriers in the wall. We keep it breathable, but the lime in the hempcrete is a cure for mold. So we won't ever see mold inside a hempcrete wall like we'll see in conventional construction. The micro project, that's my little house. That was my prototype house. I got started on that about a decade ago. It was a huge learning curve. It hadn't been done before in Alberta, so there was a lot of how do I say, a lot of things that I just didn't know about the material, how it worked, how it performed, how to install. So that learning curve was it was fun, challenging. Pulling permits for development were challenging, if not impossible, because there was no reference point in our province on hemp building. So, I researched different building mediums from around the world to satisfy my own needs for my own house. I had black mold and issues with the house that I lived in. I really wanted to have a solution for fire, mold, rot, all of these different things. And in my research, I kept getting drawn back to what the Europeans were doing with hemp. It seemed to really solve all of my conditions or all of my criteria for a healthy home. I'm not sure what that looks like, the roof of my project. I'm not sure what that slides in there for, but a lot of community. I think those are some good friends of mine that came in to give me a hand. There was a lot of community involvement in that build. So yeah, this is a little video of my experience. So I had a fire in that pilot project in my prototype house. I'm gonna just introduce the video first and then we can roll it. But I had been, again, the video kind of is self-explanatory, but I would have lost everything. And you can hear in the video, you can hear the emotion in my voice. Fire is a very traumatic experience. Some of us have either had those experiences or know people that have had those experiences. Very, very tragic. And you can hear the emotion in my voice as I kind of narrate the video.
So, record this as I'm doing some cleanup here. Obviously, we had a fire here last night. The house is built with hempcrete. Been working on it as a prototype for the last couple of years. Just got the flooring done here yesterday. So we had a little accident. We had a fire going yesterday. Construction light was close to my startup paper. I had some available packing paper sitting on the floor. It obviously ignited sometime in the early evening yesterday. Smelled the fire when I woke up to use the washroom about 3 or 4 in the morning. Figured it was just from the fire, smoldering that we lit the night before, but unfortunately not. It was due to the construction paper that was here and the light that was too close to it left on. And of course, you can see the damages. The hempcrete is well known to be fire retardant. Now, I just want to show the properties of the hempcrete itself and how it saved my house. During construction of the walls, a lot of the lime dripped into the wood that surrounded the build. Of course, the
subfloor was put in at that stage. So a lot of the subfloor was soaked in lime. You can see remnants of that, you know, on some of the board that's left over there, especially when I scrape the lime out, you can see underneath it, you know, especially from where the wall was poured, which of course contributed to not burning the house down. This beam is a full beam, tinder dry cedar, and amazingly, there was not enough oxygen from the fire which started in this area here. Of course, scored some of the Hempcrete. It was very, very hot in here. Of course, couldn't see when I first noticed the fire. We were lucky enough to put out the fire with some extinguishers we had on hand on the construction site. But literally, the Hempcrete did save my house. You can see here, there's some flooring missing, and I'll be able to patch that quite easily. You know, I've got a couple of days work here to clean this mess up. But a lime wash will take care of the scorch on the wall, and of course neutralize the odor, and sanding into, you know, the cedar ceiling, which I'm amazed, really amazed from the heat and the flame that I saw when I came in here that things weren't really blowing up. The insulation you use is a rock salt mineral wool. And I think that helped contribute to a lack of oxygen inside the floorboards to really get things moving. Of course, there isn't a lot of wood. You can see here, I'm not sure if you can see here, I'm going to be digging a lot of this out down the peak, but the actual beam itself, you can see it in behind there, is really untouched. And that's the wall beam of the house right there. So there's no structural damage whatsoever. I'll be able to replace these floor joists quite easily. And very impressed. I'm shocked and amazed that we didn't lose our house. Now you can see the house build, the prototype house I'm building, is literally 10 feet away from the house that I live in, which is tinder dry cedar. So had we lost this house last night, I would have lost everything. And the wind was crazy yesterday blowing in that direction. There's no doubt in my mind that I would have lost virtually everything. My garage and my vehicle sits not that far away, and I border on a forest, so I likely would have lost, you know, everything on the property from here to high. But I'm counting my blessings today. I'm going to clean this mess up, and we'll revisit this here in a bit. I'm going to take some video as I do.
Yeah, you know, looking back, you know, it's still emotional for me, you know, considering I would have lost everything. It was a crazy windy day that day, and it was pushing towards the big house that I lived in, and the forest that surrounds me. I've got a beautiful little forest on the edge of town, one of the healthiest little forests, all organic. I would have lost all of that too, so it would have been a disaster, and I would have had to start from scratch. So again, I sat on my step and I wept a little tear after we had the fire under control. And, you know, I thought, this is the best real world scenario. This is the best real world test or example or testimonial for the material itself. You know, it was of course the trauma of it all, but I wiped my tears and said, that's the moment that it became a mission. It went from a passion to a mission. So, you know, just educating the population on the benefits of it, how it affected my life. I look at northern communities in Alberta, Slave Lake, Fort McMurray, and a lot of the remote areas that are at risk of fire. And I think if we have been building like this for the last 100 years, we wouldn't be in this. We wouldn't have these challenges in fire mitigation or evacuation and life disruption and loss of property, loss of life. So that's when my mission started, was to educate and just get people into these houses. Deforestation, that's another big motivation for me in the industry. This is actually a photo taken from a friend's place just near Golden, British Columbia. He has a beautiful mountainside home, Earthship Hempcrete hybrid. He's a hemp farmer, pioneer himself. And the logging companies came in, they bought the land next to him, they wrecked his road getting up to the forest to basically clear cut the land. So, you know, what takes nature, you know, 25, 30, 40 years to grow a tree, we can grow hemp in one growing season. And the amount of carbon sequestration that happens in the field, it's low impact crop. we don't need all these timber products. We can do a lot of this with hemp. Again, water is life. So, all this clear cutting, this heavy industrial development right next door, it did threaten his water supply. He uses the water that comes out down that mountain for his entire farming operation. And it's just that downstream effect of all of these industries that we're using and abusing our lands right now. Mitigating that with hemp, I think, is a big part of the solution. Our living environment, water, clean air, clean soil, hemp can really help mitigate a lot of the damages that we're doing, eliminate some of them. And I think that's really going to bode for healthier lifestyles, healthier people, and more productive and happier lives. So our living environment is really, really important and part of my personal mission. If we rely on that hemp and hempcrete, we can take a lot of that pressure off of our forests. Sustainability, full circle, full loop of sustainability. We can, at a research farm in BC, we're using hemp to make kombucha teas to refeed to the plants. We're looking at closed loop sustainability, which I'm a big supporter of. Our population base is growing more and more exponentially. We've got more automobiles on the road. I don't think that's actually low now. I think it's closer to 8 billion people, but we've got to live more sustainably in symbiosis with our planet. We take care of it, and it's going to take care of us. So I think there's more and more reasons to be switching to more sustainable options. So yeah, carbon, I touched on carbon levels, and new construction, a lot of the synthetic materials that we're using adds to that, it adds to that carbon that we're experiencing, that CO2 that we're experiencing. And, some experts say that is going to lead to potentially catastrophic effects in the future if we don't get that under control. The amount of new building constructions in Canada, so I think these stats are quite old already, but we're looking at 250,000 new homes in our country every year, and that's just new construction. There's renovation, there's upgrades. Hempcrete gets stronger over time. It doesn't deteriorate like most building materials. So we're having to put less and less synthetic materials in our homes, which all have downstream effects. All the plastics that we're using, all the big industry, Portland cement, they all have a heavy toll on our environment. So we can minimize a lot of that with a different style of construction. Hemp offers hope. It goes without saying. There's so many things that we can do with the plant. And again, I'm using what's left of commodities and elements that are of benefit to our people and our society. So once everything's extracted, we've got that woody core left over, and I can build a better house with that. So it just makes sense. I call it the new buffalo. There's nothing in that plant that should and could be wasted. We can use every component of that plant from the seed to the roots and live a healthier lifestyle. If Greek Parthenon, if we build more structures like this, well, China, both those buildings are built with materials very similar to hempcrete. So we're dealing with an ancient technology. The Romans built with it. There's still buildings standing from the Romans. The ancient Chinese built with it. There's still structures there. Would we build more buildings like this, we're going to be able to enjoy nature, which I think is very important for our comfort and well-being. So Hampshire AIDS Fire. Again, it's about educational awareness and bringing hemp to make it a household name. So we entered a competition, a tiny house competition in Calgary a few years ago, where we built a hempcrete tiny house to take down and showcase. And we won 3 out of 4 awards. And that competition was graded on sustainability factors, replaceability, locally sourced materials. And hempcrete really did slide into all of these different criterias for healthy, low-cost homes. So It was an amazing project. I put 20 people together, brought a team together of 20 people, and probably another 20 people kind of naturally gravitated towards helping out with the project. So we designed and built a tiny house in 4.5 months. And that was kind of our interpretation or rendition of what healthy community homes should look like. So, it's 108 square feet, which just slides under a lot of building regulations. So it could be used as an art studio or a mother-in-law suite, if you will, backyard mother-in-law suite, or, there's so many different applications. For this application, it was a bedroom suite, which would be attached to a community of some type with maybe a community building for entertainment, recreation. But it had a small kitchenette suite built into it and a comfortable place to sleep. After the competition was done, we transported it down to a hemp cannabis show at the Stampede Park in Calgary, and it was very well received. Everybody wanted to come in and check it out. Not a lot of people had seen Hempcrete. Most of the people at that event had heard of it, but they'd never touched it or seen it in real life. So it was a real hit at the show. It was an honor to be there.
Who's the artist?
That was me and Aaron Lindley, who was also in the industry, and Sindel Johnson, who was also in the industry. It was retouched since then because that, again, 4.5 months to design and build a house. We were very pressed for time. So yeah, it was a rush situation. I like to say it was a little bit like Homes on Homes and a little bit like Iron Chef, kind of running around getting things done. But it was a fun experience and very rewarding. So again, back to my house, it's estimated that the hemp that I used in my home was grown on less than 2 acres in one growing season. So, just that alone, we can build our own homes right here with the right intention, motivation, and environmental conditions, right? This is a lady out of France. This is a bubble home. I'm not too sure why the slide's in there, but another amazing example of what we can do with Hempcrete and hemp lime. I love the organic, there's no square corners in nature. So I love the rounded corners. I love the idea of really living in symbiosis with the earth. So another great example of hemp building globally. Very artistic. We can get very creative. For me now, after being in the industry and building with Hempcrete for over 10 years, there's something very boring about a drywall wall right now for me. It's very flat and featureless, whereas as hemp, we use a lot of lime clay binders, lime clay plasters. So you can get very creative. What you're seeing here is actually a clay finish on top of Hempcrete. This was done by Dion Lefebre, which was on our team for the tiny house build. And most of this clay was locally sourced, and the pigments are all natural. So they're pottery pigments that are blended in with natural elements to give you a very artistic finish. So there's just an example of some of the projects that I've worked on in the last 10 years. My portfolio has grown exponentially here in the last few, but on the left, that is a Earthship Hempcrete hybrid in Golden, British Columbia. Beautiful home, passive built. The one on the right is in Cranbrook, BC, that I consulted on a few years ago. I don't recommend using a cement truck for Hempcrete, but we did in that project and it worked out all right. But a lot of different styles and situations that I've had to navigate and improvise around to make some very beautiful homes. Yeah, so there's different applications. This is a cast in place with reusable concrete forms. So, there's a lot of different ways that you can apply Hempcrete, from cast in place, which is packing forms, much like concrete forms. A little different because of the fibrous nature of the material. It's not poured like Hempcrete, it's more tamped and applied. So this is one way of applying Hempcrete. You can also do spray. There's spray technology out now where you can spray it into the walls. And these have their time and a place. They're a great medium or modality for installation. There's a few downsides with Hempcrete construction is the length of time it takes for things to cure. So, cast in place is time consuming, very labor intensive. Spray installation is less labor intensive. There's a smaller crew involved, but it still takes that time to cure. So you're waiting around, 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the environment, for things to dry out before you can get in and finish it. So it's a long time to wait for the paint to dry, so to speak. Blocks. There's an example of a company that was producing down in Airdrie. Precast blocks are, I think, part of the solution, part of the future. We got to bring building materials that are user-friendly, that other trades are familiar with, that can install rather quickly so we can finish the home. Homeowners don't want to wait around 4 to 6 weeks for their paint to dry so they can get in there and live in there. They want to be able to, keep the crews coming in, keep the contractors coming in and out and getting their home livable so they can get in there. Just biofiber is an amazing material. I hope to see them have a revival. They're not producing right now, but I'd like to see them. They've done a lot to advance the industry, and I'd like to see them back in the future. We've developed a precast block as well that fits into or retrofits into existing framework. So we're launching the DeVita block next month, which is a tab-in block, again, that kind of slides into and wraps around the stud. So you have a monolithic wall system. And I think that's another, just bridging that gap between cottage industry and the future industry. We can rely on trades that are familiar with, we're not reinventing the wheel. Carpenters know how to build a 16 on center 2x4 or 2x6 wall, which makes it a little easier for code validation. We're not having to go through extensive studies on structural materials and elements. And bricklayers have been laying bricks and stones for centuries. So we can rely on these existing trades to bring this into the mainstream. Here's another project that I worked on in BC on Cortez Island. So this is a combination of Eighth Fire's work and just biofiber. Beautiful house they did there, and again, it was all precast, so the cure time was minimized. The crews can get in and down the line crews can get in and finish things off rather quickly, so the occupant can get in there and enjoy their hempcrete home.
I just have a question before we leave the slide. How much would a home like that cost?
I'll be right up front, Karen. It depends on how you evaluate cost. I mean, your upfront cost is going to be more. It's very labor intensive, whether you're making the blocks on the table and in the shop or you're in the field with the crew installing. It's less expensive, I would say, than concrete work, but more expensive than conventional construction, at the point of purchase.
Right.
Again, it depends on how you evaluate cost, because your long-term savings and utilities, heating and cooling your home is going to be less expensive over time. So, and again, from my perspective, I include the downstream effects of conventional construction in that cost. What is the cost to the future generations? What is the cost to our happiness and lifestyle, right? So yeah, it's going to cost a little bit more. That's upfront, but the value is where I really evaluate Hempcrete. The value is there that just makes sense.
Great answer. Thank you.
Thank you. So here's a picture of our blocks. We're releasing these. We're actually going, how do I say, our launch is next month. It was developed and we've B-tested, prototype. We've had a couple great pilot projects that have been successful. So again, this is the DeVita block you see on the right. You can see the tab-in block. Those fit into 16 on center framework, 2x4, 2x6. And we've developed a system that's very diverse. So we can produce different sizes of blocks depending on the usage of the building, the needs of the building, and where the Hempcrete is being applied. So what you're seeing here is a 6-inch DeVita block, and in behind that you see a 2-inch shuttering block is what we call it. So you can use a combination of 1 or 2 blocks depending on the depth that's desired. We can produce a DeVita block from as wide as 6 inches, or sorry, as thick as 10 inches deep. And that can be complemented with more. I don't recommend doing more than 12 inches thick of Hempcrete because it becomes counterproductive at some point. But we can accommodate, most build plans with the diversity of the blocks. This is part of the crew that we put together for what we call the 108. That's the project that we built for the competition down in Calgary. Great people, all of them in that picture. Just a real professional crew of very bright people. So it was a lot of fun to work on that project. This is a photo of education platform we did in British Columbia. One of our pilot projects was installing the DeVita block in a tiny house out there. And we hosted a workshop teaching, again, like when I got started, the learning curve was very difficult. The first one was very hard. So I offered consulting and educational services to minimize that learning curve for people that are getting into the industry, or maybe somebody that wants to be involved in building their own house. I still offer workshop education platforms and of course installation platforms for the DeVita blocks. So those are going to be coming up again this summer. And this is the project on Cortez again. This is the crew that was involved, a professional crew that I came out to help train. Amazing people, the fellowship that's been created in a lot of my projects, very community driven, and it's just a lot of fun working with these crews. They have a lot of similar mindsets and synergies, our ideologies. So yeah, I think the industry is bright. We have a lot of opportunity here, and things are growing exponentially every year. I see more and more projects, and it's my full-time gig now. So I think we got this, guys.
Thank you, Dion. What a great presentation. We so appreciate having you here. And I had no idea that we had world-class processors in Alberta, and hemp is under Ag Canada. That is awesome.
Really help take the red tape out of things for sure, and reduce some of that stigma.
Yes, yes. Do you have time to answer some questions?
Absolutely. Yep.
Steve, go ahead.
Okay, I have a comment and then a question. I'm quite glad that Ag Canada is now in charge of hemp instead of Health Canada, because a year and a half ago, I went round and around and around for about 4 months trying to get our license to grow hemp. And at the end, I finally just gave up, because every time I answered a question, it just led to another question, to another question, to another question. And they're more concerned about, I don't even know what they're concerned about, to be honest with you. But my question is this: I have a company, a construction company. We have a new style of structural insulated panel, which is magnesium oxide board, styrofoam, magnesium oxide board, and the studs that we're actually using for the construction are fiberglass. And my thought is to replace the styrofoam with hemp, or at least maybe that hemp block that you talked about that I saw, because we could literally, so what happens is they compress it in a press actually after it's put together, and they're put together in panels, right? So the house is designed in a 4-foot wide panel that can be anywhere from 8 feet to 26 feet tall. Have you seen any structural insulated panels with hemp as the insulator?
Yes, yeah, they're available in Europe right now. I've got associates working on that around the world. Sergei Kovalenkov has mentioned he's going to be working on that. I've seen some stuff out of Hempcrete USA. They're in Idaho. There are SIPs available overseas right now. I think that's a common desire and goal target for a lot of construction companies. I think that is the future of building. I'm sure you're familiar. People want quick erections. They want things done quick so they can get on with finishing and get on with their days. So SIPs is the future. Sure.
Well, and it offers, like, you guys offer the exact same things as magnesium oxide board is fire resistant, mold resistant, etc. And if I can just get rid of the styrofoam in there and use the hemp instead, yep. I think it probably will raise our R value. But there was a question in the chat on your block. What's the R value on a typical 6-inch or an 8-inch wall used with Hempcrete?
That's a great question, Stephen. I didn't touch on that. That's usually in my follow-up presentation, but it's not necessarily, it's got good insulative value. It's not necessarily referred to as a great insulator. So Hempcrete uses the principles of thermal mass more than thermal resistance. So you're looking at a low ball number of about 2 per inch with Hempcrete. but it's the thermal mass value that really is important. And I can't stress enough, we don't really relate to thermal mass in our building industry very much right now, which is sad, but it performs more like a log home. Logs don't have R value, yet if anybody's been in a well-constructed log home, it's a very cozy, comfortable feeling. And that's because of the thermal mass of the wood, right? Yeah. So there's definitely a balancing act. Once the building is heated up, I call it charging your walls, if you will. Once the walls are charged, that'll maintain and hold that heat for many, many hours. In fact, days or even potentially weeks. So the R value is obviously significant for most practical trades and builders. That's really what architects and engineers want to hear, is what's the R value. But it is, again, it's more of a thermal mass. So we grade things on the low end at 2 per inch, but we're finding that the R value of hempcrete isn't necessarily static. So it performs better the warmer the wall gets. So either heating from the inside or heated from the sun, you're going to see that R value double potentially.
Okay, so I think what would happen, I think, is once we get to the point where I want to build a panel with the hemp, we can do the testing and everything at that point. Lastly, do you have contact information? So if some of us want to reach out?
Yep, you can find me. I'm on social media, Facebook. Eighth Fire's got a page on Facebook. We've got one on Instagram. My email is eighthfireinnovations@gmail.com. The DeVita site, we have a landing page for. We're at capacity right now, and we're looking for bigger spaces to be in. But you can find the DeVita site at devita.ca. Eighth Fire's got a web page which is being revamped. It's terribly outdated. It's got a terrible. It's got a small portfolio on it, but eighthfireinnovations.com is my other website. And my phone number is 780-283-2837. I'm a little old school. I love talking with people on the phone. So reach out to me. Any avenue is good. And thanks for your question, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Tanis.
I really love the presentation today. I appreciate that, Dion, because this is something that our councils have been talking about. We also are from Northern Alberta. I'm not sure where you are, but we're in Whitecourt. And
I'm in Westlock, so not too far from you.
Oh yeah, you're just a stone's throw there.
Yep.
But yeah, so we as a project, we were thinking of actually growing, like buying some property and growing hemp, because what I had heard from a few different places is that there is facilities to create these hemp like these hemp like blocks and all this other kind of stuff, but they don't have enough material. So it's almost like they're starving for the hemp itself. Is that true? Is that something that you guys are dealing with?
Thankfully, I've got a great relationship with a lot of the growers and the processors. So I'm going to touch wood here and say that I haven't had any issues with raw material, but it's been close. It's been very close. I've had opportunities and projects that I've really had to hunt around, and thankfully I've been able to source all of my material right here in Alberta. But I have looked south of the border and overseas for material, and I think it's as an industry, there's challenges, there's kind of self-regulation that kind of happens, and of course it's a challenging crop to grow. There are some challenges there which I can go into if anybody needs to know. But yeah, no, it's been quite good. I think I think we're the envy of a lot of our peers in the industry, because we do have hemp being farmed and we do have hemp being processed. The processing seems to be the biggest bottleneck for the biomass. There's kind of a gold rush to the CBD market for a while there, and people forgot all about the fiber, it seemed. But we've got processors in Alberta now actively processing. There is a stockpile of material available. We've got another processor firing up here at the end of April. And they're really going to be a world-class facility that's really focused on producing raw biomass and consistent biomass for industry use. So yeah, times are changing, thankfully.
And that's the thing too, is I think you're going to want more farmers. the more popular that this hemp, I mean, it's going to be huge. I really believe that it is the most underutilized plant on earth because of its possibilities. So, I mean, I hear that there's like a lot of hempcrete and, like building products and stuff, but I mean, hemp can also, I make my own hemp oil products as well, like pain salve and stuff like that. And, but I mean, one of the things we talked about in our council too is like hemp diapers. I mean, because I mean, you can make anything. What we're trying to do really is to take every single part of what goes into the dump, and we're going to reuse, recycle, and repurpose. Okay. And the way that we're also wanting to do that with it is with the Earth Power Lodge. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's something that Michael Smith has done in Montana and is actually being built in Horse Lake right now. But we want to do one here and basically make dumps obsolete. Is there any part of that? I know that's awesome that the hemp plant can be used basically 100%, but is there any part of that we could actually feed the dragon of the EPL with?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, I mean, everything. I'm so passionate about what I do. Everything should be hemp, and you're right, Tanis. It's from diapers to tampons to clothing to we have so much of our landfill is filled with synthetic materials that take time to decompose and break down, and it's definitely a environmental issue that has to be addressed. So yeah, I think I'm encouraging of all industries that are using all the different components of hemp. Like I say, the plant is so useful. And I'm 100% supportive. I wear hemp clothes. I eat hemp for breakfast. If you're going to create an industry, you got to support that industry. So for me, it's everything that I can get available that I use in my daily life. I do so, out of hemp.
That's so true. And my last kind of question, I guess, would be is, funny enough, we were actually talking about hemp on the energy alternative call yesterday, and one of the guys was saying that there's two major hemp farms, I believe in Alberta, I think is where he said it was, but the one is very successful and the other one keeps breaking his combine or something because there is because of the fibrous, or like they said it's like cement, like you really have to be careful of how you process it, like using the combine even. Is that something that you've heard as well? Like you really have to have the right combine or the right way of doing it in order to be a successful hemp farmer?
Absolutely. Yeah, there are a lot of challenges with farming. Our farm equipment isn't, it's terrible when our tractors aren't strong enough for the hemp plant. And that's the reality of it, is our farming implements, implement producers, they haven't been producing for the hemp plant specifically for the last 100 years. So we're seeing some great advancements in the farming tools that are being offered and are available for farmers. So, different, because the hemp plant can grow so tall. X59 is typically grown in northern Alberta. You're looking at a 12 foot tall plant. So to get the seed head off of that plant, you need to raise your header on your combine to 10, 12 feet to knock those heads off. And up until recently, it just hasn't been available on the market. Being able to cut the stalks at the bottom to maximize that fiber length. Having the right tooling to be able to chop those down and stoke it up, bale it up, whatever the farmer is doing for his sale. It can be very challenging. That fiber is very, very strong. It's second strongest natural fiber on the planet. So it wraps around anything that rolls. It wraps around rollers. It wraps around combines. I've seen and heard of combines catching fire because of that wrapping. It gets hot and creates fire through friction. So yeah, I've heard of people losing equipment to it. Now I don't want to deter any potential farmers from farming with it. There are things that can be done to minimize that risk, depending on the time of year that you're baling and processing. There are some options, and I've got some great, how do I say? I've got some solutions for harvesting that are being brought out of Europe And even John Deere is creating implements that can deal with this fiber. So I think we're driving that industry development.
That's exciting. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Tanis, for great questions. Lizette, go ahead.
Thank you. Good presentation, Dion. Thank you. Sorry I missed the first couple of minutes there, and I hope I don't ask questions of things you already covered. The Hempcrete, how does it compare price-wise with concrete?
Concrete's quite expensive. So we're actually about par or slightly less than concrete. A lot of that depends on the challenges with the specific project, logistics, location, travel per diems, and accommodations for staffing. That all factors in. Having quality trained people on the job makes a big difference. Project management can help eliminate some of those costs involved. But again, it really depends on the medium that you choose, whether it's, precast block or whether it's a spray installation or a cast in place. A lot of the cast in place that I've done has been community driven or had community support. So we get volunteers involved, and it can be quite significantly less, Lizette. So it just depends on how the project is managed. I've also hosted many workshops at different projects, which brings in paying patrons that help offset that cost of your professional help and some of your materials. So if the project is managed right, it can be significantly less, but to hire it out and have a crew like mine come in and do it, we're about on par.
So is this Hempcrete only available in Saskatchewan? Is that where you were at, Saskatchewan?
No, I'm in Northern Alberta.
Northern Alberta, sorry, okay, yeah.
Yep, growing exponentially. So Hempcrete itself isn't something that you necessarily have a ready bag mix for. Producers and processors are baling things now in 33-pound compression sacks, which is really great for logistics and travel. But typically you purchase hemp in bulk bags, like a super sack that a seed would come in.
Okay.
And then with a professional, it kind of formulates a mix that accommodates that specific project. So a lot of it's very craft done.
Okay, and then did you mention about? So I heard a little bit on the video clip there that in terms of having special permits, et cetera, to grow hemp. Is that all across Canada or just in Alberta that it's okay?
No, it's all across Canada. And
yeah, okay. Yeah. So are there processing plants in Ontario?
Not that I'm aware of, Lizette. I think it's Alberta, where, like I say, we have a unique advantage here in Alberta because of processors that are here. Right. We've had Innotech Alberta, and they've been producing since I guess they did a pilot project with the government in '94. They started, so they've been experimenting with different biomass applications, and they were the original decorticator here in Canada. Is a company out of Ontario called Canna Systems, and they're offering a mobile decorticator for sale. They're a startup company. They don't have one operational at the moment in Ontario, but they have had one produced, and it's I think they're running 1 to 2 tons an hour out of that machine. I haven't used it. I haven't used any of the product off of that decorticator, so I can't validate its use, but they are there.
So you mentioned that the hemp can come in bags that you could pre-mix. Could you use that like as an exchange in place for something like cocoa coir?
Absolutely, yeah. There's so many uses. There's so many uses as a growing medium, soil reclamation. I use it as a traction control on the ice in Alberta. Like there's so many things that you can do with the hemp herd. Makes amazing animal bedding. And those are some of the industry uses that compete for my supply chain, is animal bedding. So it's a very absorbent, hypoallergenic. There's a lot of benefits to that as an animal bedding as well.
And the last question I had was, have you considered? I like the concept of the bricks. That's really cool, and how the 2x4s fit right in there, and the outside piece creating kind of like a vapor barrier of sorts. Have you thought of actually doing a preform mold to replace the lumber. So once again, like you got your fascia and your trim around the outside of your windows, which are all lumber, I see. But is that a possibility that you could make them in those kinds of forms that you could make the whole thing fire resistant top to bottom?
Yeah, I think that the industry is moving towards that. There's a company out of the US called Hempwood who is using, they're using that as it would be more like a flooring or a finishing wood than a lumber, than a dimensional lumber.
Mhm.
There has been some pilot projects and prototypes that I've seen of dimensional lumber. There are some challenges with that as a builder. You know, builders want to have something that their tools are going to work with. They need to have wood that will take a nail like wood will, right? So one of the challenges is you're usually using composites to press or elements to press those hemp fibers together. And, you know, there's challenges. I've seen hemp wood that is very difficult to cut with a saw. So it's hard on tools, it's hard on equipment. Builders are trained and they have their consistencies. And I should add too that, you know, lumber isn't necessarily a evil that we should avoid at all costs. You know, I think we got to be very conscious of the lumber we use and treat it properly. Once it's in a hempcrete house, that lumber is preserved for a long, long time. So we have something called embodied carbon. Now those trees have some people refer to hempcrete as the only carbon negative building material, but trees are carbon negative if they're treated properly. They absorb that CO2 from the atmosphere. We can embody that. That embodied carbon can be used in that wall system for multiple generations, rather than having something that's disposable, something that rots because we have moisture in there. If we take care of our forests and treat them like the gold they are, like the asset, the precious asset that they are, we can have that timber used in the house for multiple generations, encase that and embody that carbon properly.
Very good. Thank you, Dion.
Thank you, Lizette. Thank you. So Dion, Rhonda asks, are the holes in the blocks for rebar use or for ventilation purposes?
Those are actually, they're optional. Those are conduit chases for electrical and plumbing. If the builder wants to have vertical chases in the wall system. So no rebar, it's all wood structure, which is a huge advantage for hempcrete construction because the lime that we use in the construction also bonds chemically with the cellulose of the wood. So rather than having steel in there, which there's no chemical bond between the cellulose and the silica, we have a chemical bond that happens with the wood. So it'll actually add 4 times the structural integrity to the wall system once that wood is encased in hempcrete.
Makes sense. Thank you, Dion. And Tanis has another question. Can hempcrete be used for footings and buried foundations?
I don't recommend hempcrete at or below grade. Hempcrete is hydrophilic, which means it'll absorb moisture from the ground. So I have done projects where it's been used at and below grade, but a lot of engineering has been, you know, a lot of attention has been paid to the proper engineering and design of that building. So yes, it can be. No, I don't necessarily recommend it. And when you start getting into hydrophobic materials such as concrete, you know, you can mix hemp in with concrete, but it does change the properties and how it reacts with the environment and its performance. So yes, it can be, but no, I don't recommend it unless certain precautions are taken.
Thank you, Dion. And thank you for all that you do. I am so glad that the outer fire, so glad it stayed small, but it ignited a really big fire inside of you to continue and share and educate the importance of us transitioning into creating hemp homes and more. And I know that you're going to most likely receive a lot of emails and phone calls from the group here. And we look forward to continuing our journey with you and the development of more hemp in not just Alberta, but all our provinces. And again, we so appreciate you for your time and your energy and all you do. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Karen. It's been a pleasure and an honor and good company I can see. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Dion. And thank you everyone for being here and asking awesome questions as always. I look forward to seeing you all next Friday and of course our Monday national call, and have an awesome weekend. Together we rise, everyone.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, bud. Have a great weekend, everyone.